When Corsair told us they were launching 4 new cases called the 4000, all based on the same core chassis, we figured we'd have to choose which of the 3 cases we wanted to review. But no, Corsair sent us all 3 cases to have a look. Each case comes in either black or white. That affects both obviously the colour of the case, but also affects the tint on the glass side panel. The white cases have a clear panel, the black has a heavily tinted panel. To start with, we have the 4000D, which costs £80 here in the UK. That has a front panel with some airflow potential and a fan at the front and the rear. Then we have the 4000D Airflow, which has a mesh front panel. That front panel is metal and heavily perforated, also with 2 fans, one at the front, one at the rear, and costs the same £80. Then we step up to the IQ 4000X RGB, which costs £110 here in the UK. That has 3 RGB fans at the front, no fan at the rear, and a glass front panel. After a bit of thought, we realised it had to be the 4000D Airflow that we reviewed. The combination of a metal mesh front panel and an £80 price, yep, that's quite compelling. So here we go. Off with the glass. So it's 2 thumb screws which remain captive. Pull the panel and away it comes. It latches at the front using these metal tags which hook into these points here. So the panel goes on like so. Top, we've got a filter with a little tag so you can lift it off. That's sort of neoprene, and that shows you the open at top. Front panel clips into place on those 4 ball connectors there, and we have a filter behind. Rear panel, same deal, no noise deadening material, quite thin steel. That goes on and comes off rather well. And there we have the core chassis. I/O is on the top. They've gone for a USB 3 port in yellow. We have a USB Type-C, combined headset jack, that's a reset button, that's your power button. Power supply shroud is fixed in place. Rear cover is fixed, so the power supply is going in there. We've got a couple of SSD caddies. There's again a yellow theme going on here. A neoprene or silicone washer below the thumb screw. There we have a drive tower with 2 2.5, 3.5 inch drive cages. Dust filter over the power supply. Oh yes, 2 thumb screws there. So that drive tower, I'm quite certain, can be removed to open up the bottom if you want. What else? 120mm fans, 3-pin connector. 3-pin connector, so they're fixed speed. And around the back of the case, we've got this cable management guide and 3 Velcro straps. My guess is that we're going to see 4000 in the various versions at system integrators in huge numbers. This is the sort of chassis that SIs like because they can get a build down pat and then they can offer the customers essentially a variety of features, but it's really all the same chassis at a very similar price. It's got all the essential features, USB Type-C, variety of drive mounts, easy cable management, and then if you want you can have RGB or not, you can have airflow or not, you can have black or white. Nifty, I like that. Cooling, you've got plenty of clearance for an air tower, full length graphics card, no trouble whatsoever, 360 rad at the front, and in the roof you can either put a 240 or a 280 if you use low profile memory. Handily, Corsair makes its LPX memory, which is low profile, so if you're going Corsair throughout, your options are increased. Before I walk you through the spec of my test PC, if you haven't subscribed to Kit Guru Tech already, do it now, and while you're at it, hit the bell button as well. Thank you very much. I could tell you anything I want about this PC and you wouldn't have a clue, you wouldn't even know if it's built, because this panel is so heavily tinted. Let us get that out of the way. The heart of the PC is an AMD Ryzen 9 3900X, a 12-core processor. The motherboard is a Gigabyte X570 Aorus Elite. We're using 32GB of Corsair Vengeance LPX DDR4 3600MHz, and just as Corsair says, using their low-profile LPX memory leaves enough space in the roof for an H115i 280mm all-in-one liquid cooler. Graphics card is a PNY RTX 2080 Ti. That's an Accelerate gaming model. There is loads of space for that graphics card. You've got yay much clearance at the front. Putting a radiator at the front of this case, no trouble whatsoever. Power supply is an 850 watt Seasonic Focus PX850 Platinum, and the PC went together very tidily. Cable management around the back is pretty good. There's plenty of space for everything that you require. I could have removed the drive tower from the front of the power supply cover to give myself even more space, but there really wasn't any need. To my mind, the biggest source of mess inside this build is the cabling from the H115i. You have the two fans that plug into a splitter cable, and then you've got the USB connection going down to the bottom of the case. Having said that, the interior of this case is so dark, the cable mess pretty much hides itself. I'm going to wrap this up while my test PC is running the TimeSpy stress test on loop, so it's drawing almost exactly 400 watts at the wall socket, and as you can hear, it's pretty darn quiet. I can hear the fans and the pump working away, but it's totally inoffensive. We've got a high-end gaming PC hammering away, working hard. The thing is, this PC does have the potential to get noisy. If you really stress the processor as well as the graphics, and the system draws about 510 watts, it gets noisy, really properly noisy. But then we've got mesh at the front, we've got an open top, we've got an open back, we've got no noise deadening material whatsoever, so why wouldn't it get noisy? Temperatures inside the chassis are perfectly acceptable when you consider it's a Ryzen 9 3900X and an RTX 2080 Ti. High-end hardware, as I've already said. The mesh panel is worth, depending on the scenario, 2 to 4 degrees over the regular panel. You have to bear in mind, of course, that behind the front panel there's that full height dust filter, so it's not a completely open front, but the mesh does obviously have an impact. The way I see it is this, as I said in my introduction in fact, Corsair's done something clever. They built a chassis that appeals to system integrators, and they've then come up with some variants on that chassis that essentially appeal to absolutely everybody. So the regular 4000D, that looks like a perfectly decent chassis, but you might want mesh. Here's mesh, what's not to like? Then of course you've got the iQ 4000X RGB, so you can add a sprinkle of RGB to the equation while you're at it. The single biggest complaint I have with this case, perversely, is that this is a black version of the case and the side panel is heavily tinted, far too heavily tinted. It makes no sense for it to be glass. It is pretty much opaque. With the black case, there is no point having glass, except of course in the spec and on the web page it's going to say glass, and people like glass. So once again, Corsair being very cute. They've even gone the whole hog and put a USB Type-C on the top. Once again, they're taking away every reason I have to come up with a negative point against this case, and that's the fact of it. The only negative I have is it's boring. It doesn't bring anything new to the table. It's a combination of all the features you'd expect from a case over the past couple of years, minus all the mistakes. And I didn't think I'd say this in 2020. I am now looking at a case that to my mind is Corsair's riposte to, say, Phanteks Pro M, albeit Pro M came out a good few years ago. Nonetheless, Corsair, in my opinion, you've done good work here, and I'm very pleased to see it. Well done. I'm Leo Waterford Kit Guru, and this is the Corsair 4000D Airflow.